The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. On the morning of March 15th, 2347, they received their answer. They were not alone, and the universe was not friendly. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship, relentless, watching the endless black through the main viewport. His ship was old but reliable, one of 12 patrol vessels that guarded the outer edges of the solar system. It was boring work. Nothing ever happened out here. The crew joked that the biggest danger was dying of boredom. That joke stopped being funny at exactly 0847 hours. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Amy Patterson from her communications station. She was young, barely 26, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that never missed a detail. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Morrison walked over to her screen. The radar showed a wall of red dots approaching from beyond Neptune. His blood went cold. "That's not possible. There's nothing out there." "There is now," Amy whispered. The alien fleet emerged from the darkness like a swarm of metal locusts. Their ships were elegant and curved, built by hands that had never known war on their own soil. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading across the solar system in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence. On the largest vessel, High Arbiter Zolrax watched the blue planet called Earth grow larger on his viewing screen. He was tall and thin, with hard black eyes and skin like polished stone. His species, the Velthari, had ruled the Galactic Council for 3,000 years. They had studied humanity for decades, intercepting their radio signals, watching their wars, reading their history. The Council had voted unanimously. Humans were dangerous. They killed each other for resources, for beliefs, for pride. They built weapons capable of destroying their own world. They were a disease that would spread to the stars if left unchecked. The only solution was elimination. "Begin the purification," Zolrax commanded. His voice held no emotion. To him, this was not murder. It was pest control. The first missiles struck New York City at 0912 hours. The Statue of Liberty vanished in a ball of fire. Times Square became a crater. The Empire State Building fell like a dying giant, crushing thousands beneath its weight. Within minutes, similar scenes played out across the globe. London burned. Tokyo drowned under a wall of displaced ocean. Paris crumbled. Beijing disappeared under a cloud of dust and ash. Commander Morrison watched in horror as Earth began to die. The Relentless was too small, too weak, too far away to help. His crew screamed and cried around him. Some fell to their knees, others simply stared, unable to process what they were seeing. "They're killing everyone," Amy said, tears streaming down her face. "They're killing everyone, and we can't do anything." Morrison grabbed her shoulders. "Send a message. Every frequency. Tell anyone who can hear that Earth is under attack. Tell them to hide. Tell them to survive." Amy nodded and turned to her console. Her hands shook as she typed. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the microphone. "This is Lieutenant Amy Patterson of the United Earth Defense Force. Earth is under attack by unknown alien forces. Billions are dead. If anyone can hear this, hide, survive, remember us, remember what they did. And one day, make them pay." She repeated the message over and over until an alien missile struck the nearby orbital station. The explosion sent debris flying toward the Relentless. Morrison ordered an emergency retreat, but it was too late. The ship was hit, alarms screamed, fires erupted. The crew scrambled for escape pods. Amy was thrown into a pod by Morrison himself. "Go," he shouted over the chaos. "Someone has to tell the story." The pod launched into space. Amy pressed her face against the small window and watched the Relentless break apart. She did not see Morrison escape. She floated among the wreckage, surrounded by the bodies of her friends, watching her world burn below. On Earth, the destruction continued for 6 terrible hours. The aliens were thorough. They targeted military bases, power plants, communication towers, and population centers. They killed without mercy and without pause. When they finally stopped, over 1 billion humans were dead, but not all of them. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker built to survive nuclear war, retired General Marcus Cole felt the ground shake above him. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and a face carved from decades of hard decisions. He had fought in 3 wars during his career. He had seen death up close and personal, but nothing had prepared him for this. When the shaking stopped, he climbed the long stairs to the surface. The door opened onto a nightmare. The sky was red with smoke and fire. The air smelled like burning metal, and something worse. The city of Denver, visible in the distance, was gone. Only rubble remained. Cole stood there for a long time, letting the horror wash over him. Then, something changed in his eyes. The grief hardened into something else. Something colder. Something more dangerous. He had spent his entire career studying warfare. He knew that the worst mistake any enemy could make was to wound an opponent without killing them completely. A wounded enemy would heal. A wounded enemy would remember. A wounded enemy would come back stronger, angrier, and hungry for revenge. The aliens had killed billions. But they had not killed everyone. And that was the greatest mistake in galactic history. Cole looked up at the smoke-filled sky, where alien ships still circled like vultures over a corpse. They thought they were watching humanity die. They had no idea they were watching humanity wake up. "You should have finished the job," Cole whispered to the distant ships. "Now you'll learn why our planet tried so hard to kill us. It was training us. Training us for you." He turned and walked back into the bunker. There was work to do. Survivors to find. Plans to make. And eventually, when the time was right, a galaxy to burn. Above the ruined Earth, the alien fleet began to withdraw. High Arbiter Zolrax filed his report with satisfaction. The human threat had been neutralized. The galaxy was safe. He looked forward to returning home, where he would be celebrated as a hero. He did not know that in the ashes below, something ancient was stirring. Something forged in fire and blood and millions of years of survival. Something that would not rest until every species that had voted for Earth's destruction understood the true meaning of fear. The day the sky burned was the day humanity almost died. It was also the day humanity stopped being afraid of the dark. The dark, they decided, should be afraid of them. 6 months passed after the attack. The aliens believed humanity was dying. They were wrong. Beneath the scarred surface of Earth, in tunnels and bunkers built during darker times, the survivors gathered. They came from every nation, every background, every walk of life. Teachers and soldiers, scientists and farmers, children who had lost their parents and parents who had lost their children. They were broken, but they were not beaten. General Marcus Cole stood before a crowd of 300 people in the main chamber of the Denver bunker. The room was cold and smelled of concrete and recycled air. Dim lights flickered overhead, but the faces looking back at him burned with something that no bomb could extinguish: hope and hatred. "The aliens think we are finished," Cole said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "They sit in their ships above our world, watching us like we are insects waiting to die. They have made a terrible mistake. We are not insects, we are humans, and we do not know how to quit." The crowd roared their approval. The sound traveled through the tunnels and into other chambers, where more survivors heard and joined the cry. It spread through the underground networks that connected bunkers across the continent. For the first time since the attack, humanity raised its voice together. In a small laboratory deep within the bunker, Dr. Natalie Grant worked without sleep. She was 34 years old, with tired eyes hidden behind thick glasses and hair that had gone gray from stress. Before the attack, she had been a professor of theoretical physics at a university that no longer existed. Now she was humanity's best chance at fighting back. On the table before her lay the wreckage of an alien drone. It had been shot down during the attack and recovered by scavengers. Its technology was advanced beyond anything humans had ever built. The metal was lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel. The power source was a small crystal that produced more energy than a nuclear reactor. Natalie had been studying it for months. At first, she understood nothing. But slowly, piece by piece, she began to unlock its secrets. The aliens were advanced. Yes. But they were not gods. Their technology followed rules, just like human technology. Different rules, but rules nonetheless. And rules could be learned. "I think I can build a weapon," she told Cole one evening. "Something that combines their technology with ours. It won't be elegant. It won't be pretty. But it will kill them." Cole smiled for the first time in months. "Pretty is overrated. Build it." Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, Lieutenant Amy Patterson drifted in her damaged escape pod. She had survived on emergency rations and recycled water for weeks after the attack. She had been found by a salvage crew operating in secret, hiding from alien patrols. They brought her to a hidden station built inside an asteroid, where other survivors had gathered. Amy became a symbol. Her broadcast during the attack had been heard by millions before the communication networks went dark. People called her the voice of Earth. She did not feel like a hero. She felt like a woman who had watched her world die and somehow kept breathing. But if people needed a symbol, she would be one. Commander Jake Morrison was also alive. His escape pod had crashed in the forests of Canada, where a group of survivors found him wandering with a broken arm and a head wound. He recovered slowly, haunted by nightmares of fire and screaming. But he was a soldier, and soldiers kept fighting. When he was strong enough, he traveled south to the Denver bunker. The journey took 3 weeks through hostile territory. Alien patrols killed anyone caught on the surface, but Morrison moved carefully, traveling at night, hiding during the day. He arrived at the bunker more dead than alive. Cole was waiting for him. "I knew you'd make it," the general said. "Men like you don't die easy." Morrison shook his head. "I'm not special. I'm just too angry to die." "Croat," Cole laughed. It was a dark sound, without joy. "Good. That's exactly what we need." A young pilot named Danny Chen brought the first piece of truly good news. He was 22 years old, small and quick, with a genius for machines and a reckless streak that terrified his commanders. He had stolen an alien fighter during a chaotic battle and somehow survived long enough to bring it back to Earth. More importantly, he had studied the aliens who came after him. He had watched them move, watched them react, watched them panic when things went wrong. And he had discovered something wonderful. "They're weak," Danny told the Council of Survivors. "Physically weak. Their home worlds have half our gravity. Their atmospheres are thick and warm. They have no predators, no diseases, no natural disasters. They evolved in paradise. We evolved in hell." He showed them footage from his stolen fighter. Alien soldiers struggling to lift objects that humans carried easily. Alien pilots passing out from forces that human pilots barely noticed. Alien bodies failing in environments that humans found merely uncomfortable. "Earth tried to kill us every day for millions of years," Danny continued. "It made us strong. It made us tough. It made us mean. These aliens have never had to fight for survival. They don't know how. And that is how we will beat them." The council listened in silence. Then President Megan Torres stood. She had been the vice president before the attack. Elevated to leadership when the president died in the destruction of Washington, she had escaped on a submarine and spent months coordinating survivors across the oceans. She was a small woman with a quiet voice, but when she spoke, people listened. "For 6 months, we have hidden," she said. "We have mourned. We have buried our dead. Now it is time to stop hiding. It is time to stop mourning. It is time to remind the galaxy why they should have feared us." She turned to General Cole. "You have a plan?" Cole nodded. "I do. It's brutal. It's bloody. It will cost us dearly. But it will work." Torres did not hesitate. "Do it." The order went out through the underground networks. Factories hidden in caves began producing weapons. Scientists worked day and night on new technologies. Soldiers trained in harsh conditions, pushing their bodies beyond normal limits. Pilots practiced in simulators built from stolen alien systems. Humanity was not dead. It was not dying. It was preparing. And when the preparations were complete, the galaxy would learn that some species were not meant to be prey. Some species were born to hunt. The wolves were awakening. And they were very, very hungry. 2 years after the attack, humanity struck back. The alien base on Europa had grown comfortable. The moon of Jupiter was cold and hostile, but the Velthari had built a dome over their compound and filled it with warm air and artificial sunlight. They lived in luxury while monitoring the dying planet below. They played games, ate fine food, and laughed about the primitives they had destroyed. They never expected those primitives to come for them. The first sign of trouble was a small blip on their sensors, then another, then 100 more. By the time the alarm started screaming, 3 massive ships had emerged from the shadow of Jupiter itself. They were ugly vessels, built from salvaged metal and stolen alien technology. They looked like weapons that had been forged in a furnace of rage. Their names were painted on their hulls in letters 50 feet tall. Retribution, Fury, Reckoning. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his eyes fixed on the alien base below. He had waited 2 years for this moment. 2 years of planning, building, and training. 2 years of nightmares about the day his world burned. Now it was time to give those nightmares to someone else. All ships, this is Morrison, he said into the fleet-wide channel. Remember what they did. Remember who we lost. Today, we take the first payment for that debt. Fire at will. The human ships unleashed everything they had. Missiles screamed through the vacuum of space. Energy weapons carved through alien shields. The dome over the alien base cracked, then shattered, exposing the inhabitants to the frozen emptiness of Europa's surface. The Velthari soldiers scrambled to respond. But they were too slow. They had grown soft in their comfortable dome. They had never faced an enemy willing to die just to kill them. They did not understand that kind of war. Lieutenant Kevin Price led the ground assault. He was a big man, heavily muscled, with scars on his face from a dozen battles. His team wore powered armor that multiplied their strength tenfold. They dropped from orbit in metal pods that hit the surface like bombs. The fighting was brutal and short. Human soldiers moved through the broken base with terrifying efficiency. They had trained in conditions far worse than Europa's surface. The cold that killed alien troops barely slowed them down. They shot everything that moved and kept moving. Price found High Commander Yeltrix hiding in a communications room. The alien officer was tall and thin, with trembling hands and wide eyes filled with terror. He had ordered the bombardment of South America, killing 400 million people in a single afternoon. Now he cowered behind a desk, begging for mercy in a language Price did not understand. Price grabbed him by the throat and dragged him out. "Mercy," he said, "is for people who deserve it." The capture of Yeltrix sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. He was brought to Earth, to the bunker beneath Denver, where General Cole waited. The alien was placed in a chair in a small concrete room. He looked around with confusion and fear. He had never seen a room so bare, so harsh, so cold. Cole sat across from him, studying him like a scientist studying an insect. A translator device sat between them, converting words into meaning. "Do you know why you're here?" Cole asked. Yeltrix shook his head. His species communicated through subtle movements as well as sound, and every movement he made screamed terror. "You're here because we want you to deliver a message," Cole said. "We want you to tell your masters what you saw today. We want you to tell them about our ships, our weapons, our soldiers. We want you to tell them that this was just the beginning." He leaned forward, and his eyes were colder than the void of space. "But most importantly," Cole continued, "we want you to tell them about a human concept, something your species has never understood. It's called vengeance. It means that when someone hurts us, we hurt them back. Not for strategy, not for resources. Just to make them suffer the way they made us suffer." Can you understand that? Yeltrix stared at him in silence. Among his people, such thinking was considered madness. Wars were fought for territory, for power, for logical gain. No one fought simply to cause pain. It was wasteful. It was irrational. It was terrifying. I understand, he whispered. Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Good. Now go home and spread the word. The aliens released Yeltrix in a prisoner exchange. He returned to the Galactic Council and told them everything. His report caused panic among the ruling species. The humans were not dying. They were not even retreating. They were attacking. And they were winning. Across the solar system, other human forces struck simultaneously. Asteroid miners revealed weapons hidden in their rocks and destroyed alien supply ships. Civilian vessels rammed enemy cruisers in suicide runs. Hidden bases launched missiles at alien positions. The occupation force, spread thin and unprepared, began to collapse. On Earth, President Megan Torres addressed the survivors through a network of underground transmitters. Her face appeared on screens in bunkers, caves, and hidden shelters across the planet. 2 years ago, they came to kill us, she said. They called us primitive. They called us dangerous. They called us a threat. They were right about one thing. We are dangerous. We are the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. And now, we are coming for them. She paused, and her eyes seemed to look through the screen into every heart that watched. They killed our families. They burned our cities. They took everything from us. Now we take everything from them. Not just their bases. Not just their ships. We take their certainty. We take their safety. We take their sleep. We make them afraid of the dark, because that is where we wait. And one day, when they have nothing left to lose, we take their lives. The broadcast ended. Across Earth, survivors screamed their approval. In orbit, human ships moved toward their next target. In the bunker beneath Denver, General Cole smiled at a map of the galaxy. Phase 1 complete, he said. Now the real war begins. Humanity had tasted blood. And they wanted more. The war spread like fire through dry grass. Within months of the Europa assault, human fleets were striking targets across the galaxy. They used stolen jump drive technology to appear without warning, attack without mercy, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Galactic Council had never faced an enemy like this. They did not know how to respond. Ambassador Lauren Webb traveled between neutral star systems with a simple mission. She was not there to make peace. She was there to make threats. Lauren was 41 years old, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the attack, she had spent 20 years as a diplomat, building relationships across the newly discovered alien civilizations. She had believed in cooperation. She had believed in understanding. Then the bombs fell, and she watched her husband and 3 children burn alive in their home in Seattle. Now she believed in only one thing: revenge. Her ship arrived at the trading station of Nexus Prime, a neutral hub where dozens of species conducted business. She walked through crowded corridors filled with aliens who stared at her with mixtures of curiosity and fear. Humans were famous now. Famous and terrifying. She met with representatives of 12 different species in a private chamber. They were nervous. Good. They should be nervous. I bring greetings from the Terran Alliance, Lauren said through her translator. And a warning. Every species that voted to attack Earth is now our enemy. Every species that aided the assault is now marked for destruction. Every species that traded with the Velthari, that shared intelligence with them, that looked away while our children died, will face consequences. One of the representatives, a small creature with too many eyes, raised a limb in protest. We had no choice. The council demanded compliance. Lauren smiled. It was not a kind expression. You always have a choice. You made the wrong one. Now you will live with it, or die with it. She left the chamber without another word. Behind her, the representatives began arguing among themselves. Some wanted to fight humanity. Others wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to run and hide. The alliance that had destroyed Earth was beginning to crack. The Krelox Collective was the first to break. They were a reptilian species, cold-blooded and practical. They had voted against the attack on Earth, and now saw no reason to die for the Velthari's mistake. They withdrew from the Council entirely and sent a message to the human government offering neutrality. President Torres accepted. "We have enough enemies," she told her advisors. "We don't need to make more." The Mindari followed soon after. They were a telepathic species who had glimpsed the rage inside human minds and wanted no part of it. They secretly contacted humanity's intelligence service and offered information in exchange for protection. Names of spies, locations of weapons factories, weaknesses in alien defenses. Everything they knew, they shared. High Arbiter Zolrax watched his coalition collapse with growing desperation. He had promised the Council a quick victory over a primitive species. Instead, he had started a war that was destroying everything they had built. His political enemies began circling, eager to take his place. His allies began distancing themselves, afraid of falling with him. In desperation, he ordered the construction of a planet killer. It was a massive orbital cannon, powered by a captured star, capable of destroying Earth in a single shot. If he could not defeat humanity, he would simply erase them from existence. The project was built in secret on a hidden station deep in Velthari space. Zolrax poured all remaining resources into it. He worked his engineers to exhaustion. He executed anyone who questioned him. The weapon would be ready within a year. Then, humanity would pay for their resistance. But Sergeant Tyler Blake was already inside. Tyler was a ghost. He had been one of Earth's best intelligence operatives before the attack, specializing in infiltration and sabotage. He had survived the bombardment by pure luck, trapped in an underwater research facility that the aliens overlooked. When the resistance formed, he volunteered for the most dangerous missions. Getting inside the planet killer facility had taken 4 months. He had posed as a slave worker, captured from a conquered species. He had endured beatings and starvation. He had watched guards kill prisoners for entertainment. He had waited, patient as stone, for the right moment. That moment came on a cold morning when the guards were changing shifts. Tyler moved through the station like a shadow, planting explosives at key structural points. He worked fast and quiet, his hands steady despite the fear pounding in his chest. He had enough bombs to tear the station apart. He did not plan to escape. He was discovered by a patrol when he was planting the final charge. Alarms screamed. Guards rushed toward him from every direction. Tyler finished his work, activated the timer, and stood up with his hands raised. They brought him before High Arbiter Zolrax himself. The alien leader towered over him, fury burning in his black eyes. "You think you can stop us, human? You think destroying one weapon will save your pathetic world?" Tyler smiled. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, and 2 of his ribs were broken. But he smiled. "I think you still don't understand what you're dealing with." Zolrax leaned close. "Explain it to me then. Before I kill you slowly." Tyler looked him directly in the eyes. "We're not afraid of death," he said. "We've been dancing with it since we climbed out of the caves. It's an old friend. But you? Your species lives for thousands of years. You've never faced real danger. You've never had to fight for survival. Death terrifies you." The explosives detonated. The station tore itself apart. Tyler died in the blast, along with Zolrax's greatest weapon and thousands of alien workers. The news reached Earth within hours. President Torres ordered a moment of silence for Tyler Blake. Then she ordered the fleet to advance on the Velthari homeworld. Commander Morrison led the assault personally. His ships emerged from jump space above a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. Billions of Velthari looked up at the human fleet with terror in their hearts. They expected fire and death. They expected revenge. Instead, Morrison broadcast a message across the planet. "We could destroy you today," he said. "We have the power. We have the right. You killed our children. You burned our cities. You tried to end our species. By any measure of justice, you deserve extinction. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we are not you. We choose not to become the monsters you tried to create. We will not bomb your cities. We will not murder your children. We will let you live. And every day, for the rest of your existence, you will remember that humanity showed you mercy that you never showed us. He cut the transmission and ordered the fleet to withdraw. The war was almost over, but the victory, he knew, was just beginning. 5 years after the attack that nearly destroyed them, humanity stood victorious. The surrender came on a spring morning, broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. High Arbiter Zolrax, once the most powerful being in known space, knelt before a human tribunal and admitted defeat. His voice shook as he spoke the words that ended the war. His species, which had ruled for 3,000 years, was broken. The Galactic Council dissolved that same day. Its great halls, which had once rung with the voices of mighty empires, stood empty and silent. The species that had voted to destroy Earth scattered to their home worlds, terrified of what might come next. They waited for the bombs to fall, for the revenge they believed they deserved. But humanity surprised them one last time. President Megan Torres announced the formation of the Terran Alliance in a broadcast seen by trillions of beings across the galaxy. She stood in the rebuilt chamber of the United Nations, surrounded by representatives from Earth and from a dozen alien species who had chosen to ally with humanity. "We did not seek this war," she said. "We did not want this power. But we have it now, and we must decide what to do with it. We could become conquerors, as the Velthari were. We could spread fear and demand submission. Many would say we have earned that right." She shook her head. "But that is not who we are. We are builders. We are dreamers. We are survivors. We will not repeat the mistakes of those who came before us. The Terran Alliance will be built on cooperation, not domination, on trust, not terror, on hope, not hatred." The camera showed the alien representatives nodding in agreement. The Krellox ambassador, a massive reptilian figure, placed his claw over his heart in a gesture of respect. The Mindari delegate closed all 6 of her eyes in peaceful meditation. Even former enemies watched with something like wonder. They had expected monsters. They found something else entirely. General Marcus Cole did not attend the ceremony. He was too old and too tired for politics. Instead, he sat in a small park in Denver, watching children play on newly built playground equipment. The city had been rebuilt over the past 3 years, rising from the ashes like a promise kept. A young girl ran past him, chasing a ball. She was perhaps 6 years old, born after the attack, knowing nothing of the horror that had come before. To her, Earth was a place of peace and possibility. Cole smiled as he watched her. And for the first time in 5 years, the smile reached his eyes. This was what they had fought for. Not revenge, not power, just this. Children playing without fear. Families walking in sunlight. Life continuing despite everything that had tried to end it. Dr. Natalie Grant received the first ever Galactic Science Prize for her work in hybrid technology. Her discoveries had not only won the war but opened new frontiers of exploration and development. She accepted the award with characteristic humility, dedicating it to everyone who had worked beside her in those dark underground laboratories. "Science is not about genius," she said in her acceptance speech. "It is about persistence, about trying and failing and trying again. Humanity has been doing that since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Now we know, and we're not afraid anymore." Commander Jake Morrison retired from military service the day the war officially ended. He had spent 5 years fighting, first for survival and then for victory. He had lost friends, ships, and pieces of himself that would never return. He was ready for peace. Amy Patterson was waiting for him when he stepped off his final transport. She was no longer the frightened communications officer he had pushed into an escape pod on the worst day of their lives. She was strong now, tested by fire, and refined by pain. She had become the voice of humanity during the war, broadcasting messages of hope and defiance that inspired millions. They married 3 months later in a quiet ceremony on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The water sparkled below them, clean and blue, freed from the pollution that had once choked it. The sky above was clear and bright, unmarked by the shadows of alien ships. "Do you think it's really over?" Amy asked as they stood together watching the sunset. Jake considered the question. "The war is over," he said finally. "But I don't think our story is. Humanity is just getting started." High Arbiter Zolrax was sentenced to spend the rest of his life on Earth. Not in prison, but in freedom. He was given a small house in a coastal town and required to witness, day after day, the species he had tried to destroy. He watched humans laugh and love and live. He watched them forgive enemies and help strangers. He watched them build and create and dream. It was, he slowly realized, a punishment worse than death. Every happy human face was a reminder of his failure. Every act of kindness was proof that his judgment had been wrong. He had called them monsters, and they had shown him monsters were kind compared to what he had been. Decades later, a Velthari historian stood before a class of young aliens and taught them about the Great War. His students listened with wide eyes as he described the attack on Earth, the human counterattack, and the fall of the Council. "There is a planet called Earth," he told them. "Its people are small and fragile. They live brief lives, rarely more than 100 years. They fight among themselves constantly. They suffer from diseases and disasters that more advanced species eliminated long ago. By every measure, they should be weak." He paused, letting the silence build. "But they are not weak. When the greatest powers in the galaxy united against them, they won. When we tried to break them, they only grew stronger. When we showed them cruelty, they answered with mercy. They are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, and also the most noble." He looked at his students with ancient, tired eyes. "Never forget what they are," he warned. "Never provoke them. Never give them a reason to remember what they can become. And pray to whatever gods you believe in, that they continue to choose peace over war, because if they ever change their minds, nothing in this galaxy will stop them." The lecture ended. The students filed out, whispering among themselves about the terrifying, wonderful creatures from the little blue world. In a distant star system, a human colony ship entered orbit around a new planet. Families looked out the windows at an alien sunrise, ready to build new lives on new soil. Children pointed at strange birds in unfamiliar skies. Engineers began planning cities that would rise from empty plains. Humanity was spreading across the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers. They carried with them the memory of what they had survived and the hope of what they might become. They were no longer prey hiding in the darkness. They were the darkness and the light that would follow. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and humanity had only just begun.